Chapters 8 and 10, Governors, the Bureaucracy, and Budgets. Oh, hey. So who is the governor? The governor is the most visible figure of that state. Historically, the governor wasn't so active a player in the state political realm. It was the legislatures that were more prominent. But as time went on, the governor became a more powerful and influential figure. Territories, protectorates, and colonies all had governors who operated as the king in the place of the king. With the rise in state power and withdrawal of federal influence, the governors become one of the most powerful figures in local government. They set the tone of the administration within the state, and if the state does well, the governor gets the credit. But if the state doesn't do well, whether or not the governor had anything to do with it, they take the blame. So where do governors come from? Well, when a man and a woman love each other very much, they will... Oh, wait, wrong one. Governors will almost always serve at lower levels of state or national service before becoming governor. Ronald Reagan had no state elective service, but was president of the Screen Actors Guild for a dozen years and very active and vocal in California politics before running for governor. Jesse Ventura was the mayor of Brooklyn Park, Minnesota for 4 years. The governor has a number of chief roles. Top of these, he's commander-in-chief. The National Guard is the governor's army. He's in command of the Guard unless it's federalized by the president. Nowadays, the Guard is used to quell riots, provide disaster relief, and maintain a general sense of order among chaos. The governor is the chief administrator. In the state, the buck stops at the governor's desk. State agencies, which are the bureaucracies, are directed ultimately by the governor. Now, since she can't oversee every agency, she subdivides the responsibility into cabinet posts just like the president. But unlike the president, many of the cabinet members are elected, not appointed. In Oregon, Secretary of State, Treasury, and Attorney General are all elected positions. The governor is the chief of state. They're the main booster of the state, and the governor represents the economic stability and quality of life of the state, as well as representing the state on the national and international scene. California has the 7th largest economy in the world, and this gives the governor of that state exceptional power in forming policy and conducting trade with foreign nations. The governor is the chief of party. As the de facto head of the political party in that state, the governor has considerable influence over not only who gets chosen for state appointments, but can also support up-and-comers at lower levels of the party structure. The governor also has a number of powers. The governor has the power of appointment. It's the governor's job to maintain a working government at all times, and when a position in the government opens up due to death or resignation, the governor is usually the one that fills that seat. Also, if there's an opening in the House or Senate, the governor has the power to appoint people to fill those positions until the next regular election. Sometimes the governor will call for a special election, but does not have to. The governor also has a lot of influence over who becomes federal judges in the states, along with the United States senators. If the president appoints a federal judge who serves for life, the governor does not approve of, then the governor can use her position of authority in the state to bring pressure to bear against the president. The governor has budgetary powers. Even though the budget must originate from the state assembly, the governor is responsible for laying out a proposed budget. This will tell how they're going to pay for state agencies and determine how money is allocated. The governor has to balance the wish list of programs and policies they have with those of the other party, especially if the executive and legislative branches are of different political parties. The governor has the power of the veto. She can just say no to laws passed by the legislature. Some governors also have a line item veto, allowing her to veto certain provisions of the bill and pass the rest, instead of rejecting the whole bill out of hand. Now, both of these vetoes can be overridden by the legislature, but it's easier to override a veto of an entire bill than it is to override a line item veto. The power of initiation. The government can recommend to the legislature the policies that he feels should become law. Just like the president, he can draft a law, submit it to the legislature. The governor can also create a commission to study issues, bringing attention to the policy point and possibly focusing more action in the legislature. The governor has the power of pardon and commutation. Commutation is when a lesser penalty is substituted for a greater one. For instance, a prisoner on death row might have the sentence commuted to life without parole. Page 251 has a good example of how Illinois used the power of commutation. The conviction in a commutation stays on the person's record. A pardon, on the other hand, is when the person is absolved from guilt for an alleged crime or other legal offense. It's as if the crime never occurred. You see this happen more frequently in relation to low-level drug offenses such as marijuana possession, and usually the pardon is after they've served their entire sentence. Finally, the power of publicity. When the government talks, people listen. The governor uses this power wisely and usually only exerts it in cases where she feels it's going to do the most good, both politically and policy-wise. If the governor were to come out on every issue, the press and the people would grow tired and pay less attention to what she has to say. There are executive members of the state government. We have the governor, of course. Next up is the Secretary of State. She is the keeper of the records of the state. She runs the elections, keeps the laws and orders passed by the legislature. We have the treasurer, the chief financial officer of the state. He oversees the tax collection for the state and the spending of state money. Do we have a lieutenant governor? No. Strangely, we are one of 5 states that does not have a lieutenant governor. But in other states, the lieutenant governor acts as the governor when the governor's out of state, usually second in line for succession, and he acts as president of the Senate. The second banana status of the lieutenant governor is dependent on what the governor wants the role to be. The bureaucracy. When we hear the word bureaucracy, we usually think of an organization with the efficiency of the Postal Service and the generosity and kindness of the folks at the DMV. But the bureaucracy is absolutely important because it is how the business of government happens. There are 5 hallmarks of the bureaucracy, and these would probably make good test questions. The first hallmark of the bureaucracy are lines of authority and hierarchy. For example, I am a teacher. I am way down here at the bottom. Above me is my department coordinator. Above him is the department chair, and so on until you get to the president of the college and then the state board of trustees. Erica Geeson is the department chair for social science. Gary Heigl is the department chair for the emergency medical technician program. The lines of authority and the hierarchy say that just because Gary is a boss, it does not necessarily follow that Gary is my boss. The next 2 go hand in hand as well: division of labor and specialization or professionalization. I'm a government teacher. I don't sweep the floors. I do not teach math. There are things that I am to do and there are things that I'm not to do. I am to do those things that teachers do. Janitors don't teach. I don't do windows. Through this division of labor, I have the ability to have specialized knowledge. I'm able to focus on only one task and develop an expertise in that job. Since I don't have to be a generalist, knowing a little bit about a lot of things, I'm able to specialize in my area and become expert in that area. And the division of labor is kind of where the phrase, "that's not my department," came from. Finally, impersonal operation under formalized rules. In a bureaucracy, we've got to treat everyone as impersonally as possible. Now, this may seem mean, brusque, or cold, but if each DMV employee got to know the life history of every customer that came to the counter, imagine how difficult it would be to get anything done. Now, here at the college, we don't operate completely impersonally because teachers and others folks in the offices take into account the individual circumstances surrounding the students' challenges. And we make changes that are appropriate and fair to everybody else, or that should be. Your book says that maintenance of files and records is a hallmark of bureaucracy, and yeah, I suppose, but this function is not done exclusively by the bureaucrats. So, how's this? I don't consider this to be a hallmark of bureaucracy, so I'm not going to test you on this being a hallmark of bureaucracy. So, where do bureaucrats come from?
This boy's born to be a bureaucrat, born to be all obsessive and snotty. I made my friends and relations file long applications to get into my 10th birthday party.
But something changed when my man turned pro.
I was sorting, but I wasn't smiling.
He forgot that it's not about badges and rank.
It's supposed to be about defiling people. We didn't choose to be bureaucrats. No, that's what Almighty Jah made us. We treat people like swine and make them stand in line, even if nobody paid us. They say the world looks down on the bureaucrats. They say we're anal, compulsive, and weird. But when push comes to shove, you gotta do what you love, even if it's not a good idea.
Bureaucrats are usually career workers, civil servants, who operate within the merit system of hiring, promotion, and firing. Their jobs are not dependent on the next election or who is in power. They are there for the duration. So think back to the spoils system. Now, as such, they have a position of security in that they can do their jobs without having to cater to the special interests. A couple more key terms: privatization. This is where we place aspects of municipal services that were previously handled by the government into the hands of private companies. Some examples include ambulance service. Mercy Flights is a private company that offers ambulance services where Ashland Fire and Rescue is part of the city. Trash collection. Here in the Rogue Valley, Rogue Disposal and Recycling is a private company that you pay for the service, where in Los Angeles it's part of the Bureau of Sanitation. You look downtown and the people who give you parking tickets, that's Diamond Parking. That's a private organization, not part of the city. We talked about the spoils system, patronage. The spoils system in government and works. Before the civil service reforms of the early 1900s, whoever won the political race got to install peers and supporters in government jobs. The downside to this was those jobs were dependent on the person continuing to win the election. If the opponent won, then not only would the political office change hands, but all the workers who supported the losing candidate would be out of a job as well. Finally, for this section, we have mayors and city councils. Things are done in the cities one of three ways. There's a weak mayor-council system where the city council is the main policy-making body. The mayor acts as the head of the council, breaks ties in voting, and really is more of a figurehead representative of the city. A strong mayor-council has a more direct ability to act over the council's ordinances. They not only do representing, but they are chief shapers of city policy. They are supervisors of the department heads. They run not only the political aspect, but the business aspect of the city. Ashland, for the longest time, has a strong mayor-council city. Most, however, have a council-manager form of government. Instead of a mayor, well, in addition to a mayor, there's a city manager that runs the city. This is a professional who runs the business end of a city, while the mayor and the city council run the political end of the city. This is what Medford has to offer. The budgeting process. Now, I know that when you saw this chapter in the book, you were looking forward to it about as much as you're looking forward to, like, oral surgery or severe unremitting pain. But we've got to get through it. We're going to go slowly, and please ask questions in the forums. There are three different styles of budgeting that governments use. Incremental budgeting, which is also known as current services baselining. Program planning budgeting, which is a performance-based budgeting. And zero-based budgeting. With current services baselining, it's a plan of budgeting where increases in inflation and program use are built into the budget projections for the following year. It takes the current cost and factors in inflation, growth, and program costs. So, you have a program with a budget of $10 million. Your predictions are that the cost of living, that inflation will increase by 5% over the next year, and that the program itself will grow by 5% next year. That's 5% inflation, 5% growth. So in order to provide the same level of service, the current level of service this year, in order to provide that same level of service next year, you need to increase your budget by 10%. Your $10 million budget just became an $11 million budget. On the other hand, your political opponents have their own studies. Their studies show that there's going to be a smaller growth in inflation as well as a more modest growth in the program. So their budget forecast only calls for a 5% increase, leaving you with $10.5 million for the coming year. Now, this is how politicians can claim the opposition is slashing the budget of the program. Even though the real numbers continue to rise, the projected service level will fall due to the perceived lack of funding. $10.5 million versus $11 million. You're still getting more than the $10 million you got this year, but it all is looking at inflation and program growth. Program planning or performance-based budgeting. Instead of making a flat fund request, the program administrators must prove that they met the goals, objectives, and deliverables. If they meet their goals, the program works and should be expanded. If they did not, it doesn't necessarily mean the budget bump is going to happen the following year. What they're going to do is they're going to analyze and research the program to see why the program failed to meet the deliverables, determine the resolutions, because not every problem can be solved by throwing more money at it. Finally, we have zero-based budgeting. Budgets are created at the lowest level possible. Basically, everybody starts at zero. Each budget packet is sent up the line to the next supervisory level and examined for duplication and waste. Let's take this for an example. The Social Science Department here at RCC proposes a budget that includes 100 reams of copier paper and 500 dry erase markers. The Health and PE Department proposes a budget with the same paper and marker requests. Both of these budgets get sent to the Dean of the School of Social Science, and their budgeteers see that historically the two departments together only used 160 reams of paper, but together they're requesting 200. So the School of Social Science reduces the request for paper by 40 reams, saving money, tightening the budget, eliminating waste due to duplication. Now the School of Social Science sends their budget up along with Arts and Humanities. College-level budgeteers take a look at all of the different departments, all of the different schools, and they see that there are still duplication of materials, namely the dry erase markers, because you could have at the Higher Ed Center a political science class in one room, then followed up by a sociology class in that same room, followed up by a math class in that same room. So in a classroom, nobody knows which department the markers come from. All we know is that where they're supposed to be, and if we don't have any, or if they're dry, we know where in the supply room we can go get them. So because the departments and schools are each requesting dry erase markers, and these requests would cause there to be a zillion markers, and since the markers are used all across the school without regard to whose budget paid for them, the total number of markers is reduced, spread across all the budget, and waste is reduced significantly. Now extend this one more space. If SOU got in on the process at the Higher Ed Center, the marker and paper budgets could be compared and even more waste and duplication would be eliminated.